Welcome to Two Hypnotherapists Talking with me, Denise Mejia, in Delaware, USA.
And me, Martin Ferber, in Preston, UK.
This weekly podcast is for anyone and everyone who'd like to know more about the fascinating subject of hypnosis and the benefits it offers.
I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist.
I'm a retired medical doctor turned consulting hypnotist.
We are Two Hypnotherapists Talking.
So let's get on with the episode. Hi, Martin. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. I'm great. Let's see what we're going to talk about today.
Currently, there's a lot in the social media doctor side of things on the fact that doctors are not taught very well how to deal with death anymore, despite the fact that it is something that you declare people to be. It is because, well, people in general haven't been for generations now. You go to the hospital and you die somewhere else. We don't want to watch it happening. We don't recognize it. We don't accept it. I mean, I don't think we should all, go back to the 1700s. Well, sorry, your time's up. We need to fight. There are scientific things you can do to prolong life, but it should not be always the end goal. Well, just to prolong it.
But it is
just to prolong it.
It is always the end result, though, isn't it? Death.
Yes, exactly. So
you've got to prolong it with the quality of life as well.
Right, but we've also tended to now. So you have somebody who is inevitably going to die, as are we all, but within a relatively short time frame, and so they go to hospice care.
Yeah.
So it's another pushing it to somebody else. Not that I think that I think hospice care is wonderful. It was wonderful. My mother had cancer. Because that was a very short, very difficult time for my father, and we were all scattered the four winds, the daughters. So it was really wonderful to have had the support of the Marie Curie nurses came to the house to give hospice care, because it can be in-house.
Yeah,
but there's a tendency.
If somebody's, in the latter stages of cancer, though, they need a lot of pain medication. Presumably.
Right, exactly. So those things are very important, but it again medicalizes. Or pathologizes something which is a natural occurrence. The end point of this life is to pass on to the next one, in my belief, but opinions differ. But at some point you'll cease to be on this earth, and talking about that is likely going to trigger somebody in an audience, because they may just this minute had a death, or be facing that themselves, or with another loved one. I mean, there's no way to avoid it. If we were to decide we were going to talk about, how much we love dogs. Somebody else was bitten by one yesterday. I mean, you can't control for all these things. So
you can't control triggers. Yeah, I mean, I remember after.
But if you were in person with that, I'm so sorry, I forgot. You could apologize. You could cut it off. When you're printing something for the interwebs, there's no limit to when it might be read.
Yeah.
Once it's there, even if it's only on the Wayback Machine. You don't know when somebody's going to come across it. And you, the writer, can have no idea of what's happening in the person who's reading its mind. So I think that wherever we joined this conversation, but we were reading somebody being upset because somebody else was upset. Yeah. It might well have been that person was just venting in order to feel better because of something else that had happened. I think not to take offense is probably the best advice. So you don't take offense from somebody else's offense. Just like try and it's really easier to say than to do, but try and give them a little grace too, because they may just
let it be water off a duck's back, as we say. Yeah. Oh. Talking of something else, I knew we needed to go back to a subject at some point as well. Do you remember we were talking about, and you very helpfully wrote for me a part for my column on menopause? Are you aware of that case over here in the UK of the woman who went missing some 3 weeks ago up here in Lancashire, a lady called Nicola Bully? She'd gone missing. She'd gone for a walk in the morning down to the river with her dog. She'd taken her children to school. She was on a Teams meeting at work. 10 minutes later or thereabouts, she was nowhere to be found. Her dog was near near the bench by the riverside, and her phone was there, still connected to this Teams meeting. And it created this huge missing persons thing. And to cut a long story short, about 2.5 weeks into the disappearance, the police, because there'd been so many nasty and vicious rumours spreading about and hateful things said about the family, and people were apparently trying to sell stories to the press, police released some information that the woman had issues with alcohol brought on by menopause. So there's been a big hoo-ha now about whether they should have released such private information or not, whether it was beneficial.
Answer, no.
No. Exactly. Anyway,
it could just
sadly,
we know that she had psychological issues, would have been more than sufficient.
Yeah. Or she was a vulnerable person, would cover a big
cover everything.
And sadly, her body has now been found 1.5 miles down the river. So, you know, after it took over 3 weeks to find her body. But getting back to, you know, menopause, the condition, and the effects it can have on some women, how it can throw them off balance.
Yeah, but I don't know that the jury is still out, I think, as to whether that was the reason she fell in the river.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a stretch. That's very strange. The police are getting very odd in Britain.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't heard of the story over there. It's been the national news headlines every day for 3 weeks because there's been such a big public interest in it, put it that way. And the media have been making such a big thing of it. You know, media from all over the world have been camped out in this tiny little chocolate box village in the, you know, in the countryside of Lancashire. And it just... It's
very odd. They must have had permission from the family to release that information.
I don't know if they did or not, but they've now had to refer themselves to the Police Complaints Commission because, you know, various groups, various people have been saying, why did they have to release that information?
Right.
I mean, what the press didn't pick up on was if the police started to look for this woman within an hour of her going missing, obviously there was something, she was vulnerable or some other reason, because normally a missing person over 18 isn't a missing person for the first 24 hours.
Yeah, but the fact that she'd left her dog and her phone there and so, and she was on a meeting, that is very strange. It was like almost as if you disappeared physically from the room. They would have to go and figure it out. But that's very odd.
So that's been in the news over here. And then, of course, we've got what's in the hypnosis news.
Yes, there is, but not a huge amount. I do like the article that we were reading earlier about the just going over how non-weird it is, how non-woo-woo, and how we need to ignore the showmanship side of it. I mean, there's a place for convincing somebody. There's a place for pointing out something to someone when they're experiencing hypnosis. There you go. And then they sort of buy into it. It's like doing the heavy light thing where they now open your eyes, see where your hands are. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, and yeah, when I was doing my research, when I was training to be a hypnotherapist, in fact, before I started my formal training, when I was just researching, I went to various hypnotherapists. And I wasn't aware of all these different testers, whatever you want to call them. One of them said to me, just stand up and did the book balloon thing with me with my eyes closed. And yeah, I had one arm up there and one down there.
Yep, very, very normal.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't regard it as being hypnotized at the time. And this was actually after the hypnosis session with him.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and looking back now, I know what I know. Looking back, it was like, well, I wonder why he did that at the end of it. Did he feel I needed more of a convincer, or
maybe he just remembered it?
Maybe.
Was there anybody else in the room? Was there some other person?
No. It was just me and this person, who, by the way, is an absolutely excellent hypnotherapist. Did a great session with me, but he did the book balloon thing after the hypnosis at the end.
Interesting.
Like you say, maybe he just remembered it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's usually right at the front that people do. I mean, usually it's how the stage. It's also, of course, how the stage hypnotist will look for the right people.
Oh yeah.
you and you. Not that everybody in the room wouldn't be able to be hypnotized, but under certain conditions, some people will go is the other.
Yeah, and again, it's what they want them to do as well. A stage hypnotist doesn't want somebody to just stand there, relax, and feel better and sort, any mental issues, like mental health issues out, or anything that's troubling them out. They want them to perform.
Yes.
So they're looking
Look, he's smiling. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, they're looking for people to, to perform and what have you. And those people, invariably, the ones that run up onto the stage to be hypnotized want their 15 minutes of fame anyway. They're usually in a crowded place. Often alcohol's involved. And they've gone up on stage the same as they would volunteer if a magician asked for volunteers.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to get up on the stage and be seen by other people.
I realized the other day why part of what is done when it's done on stage triggers me, since we're talking about triggers.
Tell me.
The quite commonly used one to exhibit how hypnosis can work is to have somebody forget their name or not be able to say a certain word. So it's referred to as amnesia. It's not really amnesia, but I find that so unfunny. It looks to me like nervous laughter, but I'm also projecting when I say that, because when I was first acutely ill, I wouldn't be able to speak. I would have speech arrest, and I would suddenly not. I knew I had thoughts, but I could not put them into words, and I could not get them out. And so I would just stand there like panicking and telling people, and that I think is why I respond that way. I do not find that amusing. I do not think, and again, possibly projection. Maybe people do just laugh, but I think that's nervous laughter. I think that's fear.
Yeah, or embarrassment.
Yeah.
Did that condition self-perpetuate as well when you got yourself worked up and frustrated? Would it does. Yeah, it still happens now and again, but I recover from it very fast. But this is we'll have to do another one. What went wrong with Denise's brain? Well, you know what, Denise? Actually, I think that's quite a good thing to say, because this is, again, just stop the stigma. We all have mental health, and occasionally we all have issues.
Well, this was neurologic health, not mental health per se, but we
brain
don't
health.
know what. Brain health. We don't know what it was, but suddenly, more than 20 years ago now, I suddenly could not function reliably in every moment of the day. There would be periods in the day that I suddenly, which is why I had to stop working, because that's not an option in an emergency room. Sorry, having a bad moment, I'll come back, is not an option. The doctor's having a lie down, doesn't know. And it would certainly be exacerbated by stress, and it was probably stress that had made whatever was happening in my brain worse. But they studied me for over 10 years, and they still couldn't figure out what it was. And it got better, possibly because I was getting sleep, because I wasn't working nights anymore, and I was eating better, and all the things that you get told to do to have a healthier life. So things got better, and then they stayed the same for a long time, and then suddenly things got back to almost normal. I am not who I was at 48 when this happened. The chances of me being 69, and still being what I was at 48 is pretty slim. I mean, there's definitely going to be changes. So I think I'm okay now, but since we don't really know what happened, and it's interesting because I would be perfectly happy having an MRI. I think I'd be okay having an MRI and seeing what it looks like now. I don't know what the issues were then, but because there's nothing to address now, because I'm supposedly better, nobody wants to do it. So we don't know if things grew back or what happened, but being stressed about it was very difficult, and it was I mean, you've said it many times, haven't you? Incredibly frustrating.
You've said it many times. Any medical condition will be exacerbated by stress.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the stress of having a medical condition, I mean, it sort of self-feeds on itself. Really.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? We all, well, maybe not in your case with you being a doctor, but we all know if we go to the doctor, I certainly do, you do get those thoughts going through your head before you go, could it be this? Could it be that? No,
I'm
not the type that if I cut my fingers, like, oh my God, is it going to drop off? No, I'm not that bad. But when I discovered a growth in a very personal area a couple of years ago, it was like, oh my God, what could this be?
Right. Well, that's as we know, everybody catastrophizes everything. It's a natural, when my husband decided not to call me when he was landing in a snowstorm and the plane had been delayed landing for ages, and all the flight stuff was saying that they were already on the ground and he hadn't called. Hours, like 9 hours went by. And then he walked in the door and I tore him a new one. And he get, why? Because you didn't call me.
Yeah.
Because I was already planning the funeral. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing too dramatic then. Yeah. Getting back to what we were talking about 15 minutes ago, and you were saying about doctors perhaps aren't as prepared to discuss death than one thing than another.
Well, because society as a whole isn't.
Yeah, I mean,
because doctors are very factual about it, and that's not what people need to hear.
But society's getting like that over here. Now, we've got these adverts on television now. Simple goodbye, or words to that effect. Go back, say, 50 years. People died perhaps more so at home. And then there used to be this tradition of having, Uncle George in his coffin in the front lounge for 2 weeks before the funeral.
I don't think 2 weeks was a very good idea, but yeah, it would be for a while. That still does happen occasionally, even in the US, where they tend to make everything plastic wrap quite quickly. It's in rural areas where you're a long way from the funeral home, and things will tend to happen and get buried in the farm or whatever. So, but it's unusual. Actually, this is an interesting thing to discuss. One of the up and coming aspects of hypnosis is helping people die, as in helping people with the process of dying, not hurrying them along. Not hurrying them along.
Dr. Death is Dr. Denise, yeah? Okay.
So it's the idea is that it is frightening. Acceptance and often people fear pain. A lot of people are okay with being dead. The idea of the act of dying is frightening because they've never been there.
They were my dad's exact words. He said to me, I'm not frightened of not being here anymore. I'm frightened of how I'm going to actually die. I said, you can't come back and complain about it, so don't worry about it.
But that's it. So there are hypnotists who are essentially, to use the word doula, I don't know if there is a word for someone who assists someone to leave, but there is the doula who helps a woman prepare for childbirth and helps through that part, non-medical assistance for that process.
That's helping the woman with her mindset, is it, or
yes, and just the practicalities of how to breastfeed, and all of that stuff in there that often would have been handed down by one's mother or aunt.
Yeah, but to quote you from a previous podcast when I was saying something about childbirth is painful, and you took me to task immediately and said, do not perpetuate the myth. Do these doulas help to remove that myth?
Uncomfortable. Yeah, not. Although I think it was Sharon, I can't remember who it was, but there was a conference I was at recently where somebody also took people to task. If a woman is using the word pain, please do not be dismissive of what she is experiencing. So let's take that pain down and make it less painful, and then just merely uncomfortable. Don't say, it is, because your body will respond to what your brain is thinking.
Yes.
If they're thinking pain, they're going to experience it as pain. If they experience as really uncomfortable, but there's a reason for it, it'll be a lot better. A harder sell if it's because they're having a heart attack. Having a baby, there's a definitely positive thing at the end of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But we can change perception.
Yes, which of course hypnotherapy can change perception.
Exactly. And so that is the idea, I believe, for these people who are working with the dying, who can go in and help people to relax, help the family members too, because watching somebody die is quite uncomfortable, and we don't do it very often now. One, because for the most part, with the exception of during the pandemic, most children outlive their parents.
Yes.
And most children make it to adulthood, not all by any means. And we have a horrible infant mortality rate in this country. There's so many things that need to be addressed, but it is a different experience than it was back in my great-grandmother's day.
Huge differences between different parts of the population as well.
Of course. But the thing is, as you said earlier, we're all going to end up there. So it would be nice if it's nice for children to go to funerals, but we need to destigmatize death too. It isn't something Granny did on purpose. This is a natural thing that happens.
It's inevitable, and yes, you've got your nice sort of expressions, well, the funeral should be a celebration of their life, this, that, and the other, and yes, it should, but people are so soon after the death and they're grieving, it's one of those things that's a nice thing in your face. It's a bit in your face, yeah.
Well, I did go. I had several funerals last year.
I know.
And but one of them truly was a celebration of life. The lady was nearly 100, and she'd had a wonderful life. And her great grandchildren were there, and there were some others that were coming up the generation behind her. I mean, it was very lovely, and it was great fun to see pictures of her when she was tiny. Because photography's been around that long, so that was really nice. The other ones, because as I get older, people seem to be younger when they're dying, when really to die in your 70s, it's not that out of place. It's not. I'm not planning it myself. But,
oh, you're going to live to 100.
Yeah, no, that'll be lovely, but or maybe not, depending on how healthy I'm feeling. But when it's somebody who's younger, somebody who's close to your own age, because you're dealing with the loss of that person, but you're also having that reminder that you will also end up there too. So I think that hypnosis can help with the person, with relaxation for everybody and some sleep for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know what else they would be doing.
I would question whether or not some hypnotists may bring a religious or spiritual aspect into that.
Well, if they've been asked to, if they were from the same faith background, then that would be a reasonable thing to do.
To reinforce those beliefs that they already have. Yeah. Okay. So in the same way that some hospitals make available hypnosis recordings for people to listen to before going to theatre, not in the anaesthetic sense, but just relaxation. Just relaxation and confidence, etc., and taking away fears. Do you think the hospitals could provide something for patients who have perhaps got a terminal diagnosis, that kind of thing?
Yes. And I'm sure that some do, but this is why I really think it's important that we reach more of the general population of physicians. Not that I don't want to talk to the academics, but they've got their own thing going on. It's the general population of physicians who have not been taught this in school. So few schools teach it, that they're missing a trick. This is something, it's not a trick, but it's something that they could offer to their patients.
Okay, so
not necessarily a personal hypnotist, but you could certainly have a selection of audios, especially these days when everybody's got flipping phones and you don't even have to produce a physical object.
Okay, then. So hypnosis / hypnotherapy in the medical setting, it could improve the way you speak to patients in the emergency room. It could help with palliative care.
Absolutely.
Could form a part of palliative care. Where else do you think it could benefit? Because I know you're doing your program soon on this for doctors.
It honestly is useful in every circumstance, I think, because not I mean everybody should get hypnotized. I mean, it should be offered.
Yeah.
Not everybody is nervous going to surgery. At the general level, there's going to be a little bit of discomfort because you don't know what's going to happen.
But you know something? I've never been nervous having surgery. I love that bit where you count back and you go boom.
Oh, I hate that. Although I would probably be quite good at it now because that's what we do in hypnosis all the time. So it wouldn't bother me. It's a control thing. I did not like not being in control.
Right.
Of what was happening. So now I would possibly relax more.
Yeah, because you used to being hypnotized.
Yeah, well, fairly, as a child, I had some minor operations, and they were not, back in the old days, they were really mean to kids. We're talking more than 60 years ago now. I mean, it was like, turn over, all of a sudden you get stung in the rear end by a needle. They didn't tell you was coming. I mean, a lot of things that being told, I'm sure there were no lace curtains in the operating room, but I remember looking at lace curtains. I have no idea where they come from. and the doctor taking my hand and then suddenly stinging me in the hand because we started an IV. But no warning or anything. I was
no shout, scratch, this might hurt.
Nothing. Yeah. No, here, give me your hand. Ouch. And I pulled back and I got told off. I think that's a lot of my discomfort as an adult. You know, it was not, again, messages in the back of your mind, not real life ones.
Yeah, again, a trigger.
It's quite surprising how we've changed now. You can have parents can be at bedside most of the time. If they're able to be, they can be. Whereas there were set visiting hours.
Yeah, there still are in some hospitals. Perhaps not so much with children.
For children?
Yeah, I know when children are having huge operations, transplants, that kind of thing. You've got the theatres with the viewing galleries, haven't you, for the parents? And
gracious, I wouldn't want to have a parent watching me do an operation of that ilk.
But I mean, so I'm going back to medical things again because we're drifting. So hypnosis, right? Okay, it can help with childbirth. It can help with palliative care. So we've got the birth and the death bit. Any medical condition
is you've got anxiety around. So it helps with the anxiety that will cover everything. But there's direct effect for pain, certainly acute pain in childbirth, and the chronic pain of everything else. And we know that it has a certain amount of immunologic effect, that it actually physically can affect the body. So it's IBS and presumably a lot of other gastric ailments. It could help somebody relax and decrease their stress so that cardiac patients would be benefited. Pre and post-surgical anything. It improves blood loss during theater. There's a lot of proof that it can be beneficial in these conditions. But the main thing really is mindset towards what's happening.
Yeah. It's your perspective on things, because it's like most things in life. It's not the things that are happening that bother us. It's the thoughts we attach to them. It's the way we think about them.
And the not knowing what's happening next.
Yeah. But also hypnotherapy does help you reframe something, how you look at something. It can alter your perspective on it.
Have you done much post-traumatic memory, whether stress or not? Have you worked with anyone who's has a particularly bad memory?
I wouldn't want to go into any detail because the person maybe I'd be able to identify themselves. Yes, I have, and quite recently as well. And yes, hypnotherapy really, really is helpful for that. Again, it's not a question of directly suggesting something to alter their mindset. It's a question of giving them able to take that step back and reassess for themselves and give themselves a new perspective on something. Just explore their own mind a little bit without all those thoughts going round and round and round.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is something I'd like to get across, actually. It's very different. People may confuse hypnotherapy with the act of falling asleep. I liken it to that point where you're not quite awake, not quite asleep, because you never remember falling to sleep. But not when you're falling to sleep like that with things on your mind. Hypnotherapy takes those things away. It quietens them down. I think that's a good way of describing it. It quietens them down, and then you're in that nice dreamy-like state. You came up with an expression the other day. Actually, I've got notes everywhere, Denise. I'm keeping notes on you. Therapeutic daydreaming.
Yes, that's what it is.
Like that. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate description myself. Therapeutic daydreaming. So all these things hypnotherapy can help medically. So a shameless plug.
Yes. Go ahead.
Come on.
What's your shameless plug?
Your shameless plug.
Mine isn't ready for prime
but
time.
It will be.
I'm working on a program, CME program for physicians.
No, but I think you're being too modest there, because it is an exciting program, and you are going to be teaching doctors hypnosis.
Yes. What? No, teaching doctors about hypnosis. I'm not yet ready to teach them hypnosis.
No, but you're going to be teaching doctors about hypnosis, and I from me as a mere therapist, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. But I'm very, and it was fun because I was at my doctor's last week and mentioned it, and he said, "Ooh,
yeah."
So he's quite excited about it, and I also hope that then would translate into them talking to their office staff, because although a physician may not have the time or even inclination to do hypnosis himself, him or herself, I think that they might want to have people in their office trained.
Yes.
Who could use it.
Or if not trained, enthused about it.
Yes. And of course, others would be in situations like yourself where they could hire, or not hire you, but have a therapist come into their office on certain days of the week and work from there, depending on their space requirements. I see a patient at a local clinic. I physically go there because of her condition. She can't do Zoom with me. And so that's a particular circumstance, but we're trying to get it past the attorneys. Difficulty with me being a doctor, but not being a doctor anymore.
And you live in a very litigious society.
We do a very litigious society. So I'm going to hopefully be working down there and being able to work with a larger group of people.
Have you found the doctors you've spoken with or you've approached and people within the medical profession, have you found them more amenable towards hypnosis than you thought they would be? Almost all
of them are. There's a few who are clearly just being polite.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah. For the most part, it's something, they want to know how much is it going to cost my patient, because that is a big issue for everybody. It's fun to me that people will go and drop $1,000 on one of those.
Yeah,
that was a phone, in case you didn't see it in the camera.
Or you're listening.
Right, and not want to spend $200 or $300 on something that's going to stay with them forever.
Yeah,
that's going to. The easiest sell, of course, is cigarettes, because you can say this is how much it's actually costing you just to smoke, and then you can even break down, and this is the cost to your cardiac health and your lung health, and the other things are a little more amorphous. It is hard to explain to people how much better they will feel. And of course, we can't guarantee, because it's not just, we don't come in and do a thing and then everything happens. It's not like, I will chop off your foot now, then there's a definite thing. But if I'm taking away your pain now, if they're not on board and helping you with that.
Yeah, I mean, smoking, ooh, dear me. Yeah. I think if that was invented tomorrow, it would be immediately banned.
Smoking, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this country, we can blame our royal family. It was Walter Raleigh who brought tobacco to England.
Oh yes,
Queen Elizabeth I.
Yes, but not using as directed, because that was not the way the Native Americans were using it at the time.
Oh, were they sticking it in pipes or just burning it?
Yeah, it was for religious experiences.
Oh right, okay.
They weren't. Yeah.
Well, we've covered birth, we've covered death, we've covered the bit in the middle. We didn't know we were talking about those today, but we've reached the end of the episode, Denise.
I will be interested to see what you do when you edit this.
Oh, well, that just about wraps it up for another one, Denise. We've gone all over the place as usual.
Indeed.
All right.
You must keep an eye on the comments to see if people are getting fed up with this rambling of ours. But yeah. I guess they just wouldn't show up if they don't want to listen.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Fine.
So don't forget, next episode, Helen Breward.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Joe was last week, so yes, that's great.
Yeah, Helen Breward, next episode. Don't miss. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.
Bye, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please remember, this podcast is designed to give you an insight into therapeutic hypnosis and is for educational purposes only. So remember, consult with your own healthcare professional if you think something you've heard may apply to you or a loved one.
If you found this episode useful, you can apply for free continuing professional development or CME credits using the link provided in the show notes. Feel free to contact either of us through the links in the show notes. Join us again next week.